Welcome to the Design for Impact podcast. I'm Kara Bombell, an Aussie in London, an experienced designer and strategist obsessed with fixing the world's most broken systems.
And I'm Philip Lockwood-Holmes, an Englishman in Edinburgh, not New York. I work with leaders and organisations helping to turn good intentions into real-world impact. We are your hosts as we meet some of the world's most ambitious thinkers, builders and changemakers who are redesigning the systems that shape our lives.
From ethical AI and climate innovation to women's rights, healthcare and humanitarian work, each episode dives into the real stories behind people doing the hard, meaningful work of change. But at its core, we're exploring how can you use design and creativity for impact. Hi, Kara. So great to see you again.
Kara, lovely to see you. Kara in stereo.
I know. Kara squared. Two Aussie Karas squared. Well, thank you so much for joining the Design for Impact pod. I think it's such an interesting time when we think about the collision of AI and human-centered design. You know, I feel like it's this perfect sort of yin-yang. And so I'm so excited to have this conversation with you today.
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, fantastic. All the way over the ocean and across the other side of the world in Sydney. And obviously I'm in London and Philip's in Edinburgh. So tell us about you, your background and how you started EthicAI.
Yeah, cool. So I'm one of those people that just loves to climb the jungle gym. So I started off in documentary film, totally different world. Loved editing, creating content as part of that. Then kind of stepped a bit of sojourn into digital. Loved Project Mate, which is where I met you at a lovely digital agency working in sort of project management delivery. But whilst I was inside that space, got really into tech. So kind of maneuvered more into deep tech expertise and kind of looking more at that innovative tech and how to implement, not necessarily as a developer, but just actually as someone who's deeply interested in seeing it implemented and how it can be implemented for impact. So a bit of, the structure and artifacts around that. And spent a long time going through that into sort of senior operations roles. So it kind of created this cross-section of technology, but then delivery and impact. So operations felt like a natural fit, went into sort of COO roles. And whilst I was spending so much time in corporate life climbing that ladder, I just really felt once I got to the top of that ladder that it really was going not where I wanted it to go. Like I really wanted to see how I could use those skills in a more effective way. I was working really, really sort of hard inside these large sort of corporate, doing lots of consulting for big blue chip companies. And what just kept on coming up was I was so interested in AI as an optimization tool, as an operations element. And I could just see the light coming down the tunnel. What is the impact going to be on workforce? What's it going to be on individuals, on people, on communities, on society? And I really do see this amazing potential for this technology to create meaningful and extended impact for lots of different communities. However, a lot of the people that were embedding this are typically large corporations who have the funds and the resources to do it.
Yeah.
What I find so interesting is that the people who get the most out of it are actually small to medium-sized businesses. It's going to be, not-for-profits, charities, people that are actually resource constrained have more agility to use it and embed it in ways that support their current systems, whereas large enterprises are actually finding it more difficult to implement. So EthicAI sprung from the brainchild of that. And then I partnered up with my business partner, Catriel Healy, and she is amazing. She's a chief people officer. We work together inside corporate. We just kept on having the same conversation. She was taking it from the organisational design, people perspective. Mine was from operations. And then when we merged that, we created a little business baby.
A little gorgeous AI business baby.
Yeah. And it's been great because it's one of those things that I felt like I was kind of concerned about it, having lots of conversations, and now moving out into the space, have noticed how much it resonates with a lot of people.
And so tell us about EthicAI. Tell us about your business model. What do you actually offer to clients? What sort of problems are you
Cool.
solving?
Yeah, absolutely. So EthicAI, what we do is started off as a consultancy. So we typically go into an organization, look at their organizational readiness for change like AI. So oftentimes we'll go into an organization and be like, okay, the CTO or somebody said that we got to start using AI, so we're going to start using AI. But realistically, like, is the organization ready for it? Are people on board? Are people actually antagonistic towards the implementation? And so we do that diagnostic upfront to understand where the organization's at. We look at shadow infrastructure because one of the big things that often gets missed is that people, like, companies can say, or like, government departments will say, oh, okay, no one's using AI, but then everyone's using it like at the side, but they don't want to use the, five model old version that's actually not going to be beneficial to them. So they're actually using documentation inside these, just inside shadow infrastructure. But then we look.
That's like me, Kara. So that's like me essentially like working for a government department in Australia, and kind of you've set me up with a whole bunch of sort of clunky things that I meant to use, but I'm actually just kind of using ChatGPT, my personal ChatGPT account, to kind of like help me with my day-to-day task. Is that sort of what you mean
Yeah,
when you're
absolutely.
talking about okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of people are just going, okay, cool. Like I need to do this quicker. They've told me not to use AI. Okay, I'll use it anyway because it's making like there is such a valuable impact to it. So if you actually don't have an understanding of what that looks like, then it's going to fall over because you're picking the wrong tools. You're not really understanding where people are using it. But then also at the same time, understanding what the sentiment is towards a change like this. But creating that level of co-design so that the people inside the organization see the benefits that will happen for them. What we have seen a lot inside the public sphere is top-down implementation. AI is being rolled out. It's either creating job loss, it's creating, a sense of just fractured experience for a lot of staff. And so if you actually go in with the understanding of how is this going to be able to benefit the staff base, it's not for a cost reduction. That's probably one thing that I haven't sort of set up front. But at EthicAI, we just very much aren't looking at this as a cost reduction. It's like what value can be brought to the table by using a tool like AI. And so when we look at that kind of from that lens, it's like understanding where the sort of key areas of maybe drag or impact are happening inside the organization. And then giving the framing to employees that this is actually going to make your life better, but understand what the strategic next steps are for them inside their role progression. So the example I was going to raise was we've done a fair bit of work in allied health. And so, there's typically inside an allied health practice, they're not really looking towards like AI as a cost reduction mechanics. Like, how can I actually support better service, better sort of care for my clients? Is there any other opportunities to really delve inside that area? So what we did with a medium enterprise allied health practitioner, um, from your perspective, what is the most arduous part of your day? What do you find so hard? And resounding response was note taking. Like, everyone hates note taking. Everyone thinks it's a bore and it's hard, but obviously it's necessary. And when we kind of did the analysis, okay, so a typical practitioner is using 1 hour a day to do administrative labor. That includes like, correspondence and doctor's notes and all that type of stuff. In which case it's just like, it's not the best use of their time. No one goes into being an allied health practitioner to be like, I'm going to be doing notes all day. Like, it's just not aligned to the version of what they see themselves as being good at. So, okay, if that's where we use AI, but then the big question that we ask as part of EthicAI is, okay, we're not trying to get rid of roles, but what is going to fill the gap? What do we do if we're reducing the amount of administrative, like that's like unpaid time? So some people's natural reaction is go, okay, cool, let's get another hour of practice inside, on these individuals, extract more. But if you actually do this strategically and to get the impact that you want to see, it's like, what's actually the future vision for this practice? Like, what are you trying to achieve? In this instance, they were wanting to move further inside stroke recovery, sort of owning more thought leadership inside that space. So, okay, we've now created a structure for you to be feeding back research, looking at novel research, interacting with your patients and the idea of creating research inside that space. But obviously they didn't have time or capability to do that without the structure. So you can see that oftentimes, I think a knee-jerk reaction is to try and just fill the gap rather than look at what is our strategy and how can we use AI to achieve bigger things for our organization. Everyone has access to AI. Like, it's not a strategic advantage to have access to AI. It's how you can use it and actually drive your strategy forward.
And what's the role of, and we've been talking about this a lot, right, Kara, in terms of human-led AI, human-centered AI. What does that mean to you, and how is that sort of manifesting in the work you're doing through EthicAI?
Yeah, it's a good question because we have three strategic pillars that we actually operate against. So one being human first, second being psychosocially safe, and then third being sustainable. And when I say sustainable, it's environmentally sustainable, socially sustainable, economically sustainable for the organization, because there's a whole heap of, it's not just what has come off on first launch, right? But when I talk about human first, it's actually like, how do we make sure that AI is being used as a tool to enhance the actual experience of being human? So what are the skills that humans have that AI cannot replicate? And how do we actually drive towards a more sustainable and enjoyable workplace? No one was like 8 going, you know what? I just want to be in Excel spreadsheets all day. That's exactly what I want to do. Like, it's just not the reality of where people thought workforces were going to be. And so we've kind of created this artifact of what society deems as appropriate labor. And I think that this is the thing, is this has been completely disrupted by AI, the knowledge economy and what this means in terms of like data maintenance, all the kind of architecture of society is really quickly being impacted. And so let's go back to what actually makes really resilient people in AI augmented workforces or not. But realistically, what steps them apart? And this is really well articulated by MIT's Epoch research. And this is something that we've operationalized as part of like our organizational design and individual sort of design principles when we're going through role design.
So when we spoke before, you talked about a case where you helped implement a system where it kind of supported and protected staff, empowered
Yeah,
them to
absolutely.
kind of make more impact in their job.
Yeah, so at the moment we're working with an oversight, a government oversight body. So it's the Ombudsman, and essentially what they do by definition is integrity oversight. But a large portion of that is reviewing case materials, creating timelines, creating like this level of oversight on the cases that have already been completed. In this instance, particularly for Ombudsman, they are looking at opportunities well, the first thing that sort of came up was when we were doing that diagnostic. So we worked with them in that diagnostic, and what really came through was the risk of vicarious trauma through exposure to materials. So this is a really important role. We all agree that we want to make sure that people are empowered, that if there is a situation where we feel like a integrity oversight has to be involved, of course, we all feel that they need to be equipped with the right sort of time and allowances to be able to review this content. But that also comes at a tremendous cost to these individuals. Like, even just having access and seeing the materials day in, day out can create obviously impacts for people's mental health and
And, sorry,
psychosocial safety.
what kind of cases are these that they're reviewing in terms of kind
So
of the
they're looking
content?
at domestic violence, they're looking at child safety, child exploitation material, they're looking at, like, so as part of that oversight, they're getting, like, for example, let's look at a domestic violence fatality. So during that time, they're probably looking at multiple AVOs, what's happened inside domestic violence over time to hit a crescendo of fatality. So you're getting a whole timeline of failures of the system to actually intervene and support. And like, as I said, just that in of itself, like I'm constantly, my hat is off to these amazing people that, as I said, do this day in, day out and are exposed to this material. How do we actually create it so there is assistance in that? So maybe we can reduce the vicarious trauma, that they're actually brought into strategic positioning, or they're looking at community outreach, or they're looking at prevention tactics, or, all those different types of things, rather than just the maneuvering of like a case, because that's what AI is absolutely great for. Like, let's look at how we're actually creating a system that speeds up that sort of nature of just absorbing large amounts of data. Because I don't like, what was actually been really interesting is we're kind of looking at A/B testing between different cases. And it's like, okay, if a human's doing this and a AI is doing this, and like, okay, there may be errors on the AI side. If we're looking at the human side, humans make errors too. Like when people are tired and traumatized, or that they're just like hitting a peak, like humans make mistakes too. So what does that mean if we if we start like sort of backtracking, going, okay, what's our error tolerance? Like, where are we kind of weighing up and creating like an ethical framework for deciding where we're happy to implement AI and where we're not? So this is where the whole sort of argument around human in the loop. A lot of times people discuss human in the loop as a catch-all. Oh, we've got a human in the loop. But human in the loop means nothing unless those humans have informed consent, that they understand what's happening, they have the time to consider and the cognitive capabilities to actually make
decision-making capacity,
because otherwise it's just like, cool, that like, and we saw this with the Manab in Iran, school children, 175 school children were killed as part of an American attack on what they thought was a military base. Now, this is where we kind of look at AI. So they had been using a Palantir Anthropic AI system that had old data. So they did have a human in the loop, right? But all those micro decisions that would typically happen through data analysis, and you'd have like multiple heads, like somebody at some point, if there was the amount of resource that was thrown at that historically, probably would have picked up that things had changed at that location. But because it was done with old data, it retained that, that was part of a military base, and obviously worked out catastrophically on multiple fronts.
What do you see as a role in design, human-centered design, creative thinking, in kind of unlocking some of these issues when we think about AI in organizations?
And look, I think that really takes me back to that like epoch framing. Like, it's what is the role of not just necessarily design, but I think this is going to be across how everyone needs to actually structure their thinking. How am I more engaged with end users? How am I more engaged in understanding their problems and their concerns, and whether or not there's contraindicative kind of or perverse incentives as part of that, whether or not there's it's a different muscle memory and skill than what has been embedded inside schooling, education, workforce for the past 40 years. So like everything has been targeted towards like I would say decisive decision making. Like, how do we actually, like, we're making calls and we're moving quickly, and that was kind of what was really rewarded. And now it's our ability to actually create a different muscle strength, which is critical thinking. And because the only thing that we really have now that's like so different is that ability to sort of sense judgment, be in person, understand what's happening under the hood, rather than just what the data points tell us. So, because the data points telling us something, like as I said, that's no longer going to be something that's going to be our domain, because the amounts of data that we have now is so large that like to think that that's going to be where humans need to spend their time, it's just not true. So the skills as a designer is like, how do I actually create this level of connectivity, understand like that role is just so important to understand impact, where we need to go, what could be the perverse incentives that take us in a different direction. And that's, I think, a really noble and novel skill that we're going to have to continue to develop.
I kind of just got shivers when you were talking about all of that. Like, it really is a kind of summary of like humanity and the future of humanity in terms of how we interact and engage with each other, and what the role of organizations mean. And it is quite a profound sort of time in our lifetime. Like, I do sort of think about the stories that we're going to be telling our kind of grandkids when we're on the porch having a Chardonnay, right, Kara? But I feel like we could do a whole other episode on the skills of the future. But I'm going to ask you sort of one last question to kind of wrap up, which is, you touched on a little bit before around, this positive intent, and that people do have this positive intent, but I feel like organizations and even clients that come to me, they just don't know where to start. They really, really don't know where to start. So what would be, for people listening, what would be the kind of one or two takeaways of, besides obviously engaging EthicAI and your incredible organization, like, where would I start if I was a small to medium-sized charity or organization, purpose-led, maybe working in healthcare? Where do I start?
Well, where I wouldn't start is
Okay,
starting.
let's go with
Where it wouldn't start is starting with the technology. Like, AI is going to change. Like, it's going to change. The types of AI is going to change. Like, all the ways that it's going to roll out, the models that are going to be. Like, don't start with the technology levels. Like, understand what business problems that you have, and that just like, it's actually quite interesting that, as we've created our diagnostic and going through and like talking with businesses, the same issues are replicating. And I'm sure that you guys have experienced the same issues that you've seen inside organizations you've worked at. There is, how do you actually create connection, a more formal opportunity to connect to vision and mission and strategy, right? And so, like, a lot of people are going, okay, well, AI is a technology. Oh, I don't know where to start. Type, like, that's the thing. But it's like, okay, don't, like, that's a second order issue. Let's first look at what is the impact that's going to have inside your space, and then go, okay, maybe what are competitors doing? What things are we taking into account? But realistically, it's vision, mission, and strategy. So, like, if there's issues there, then that's a different problem. But when you go, okay, well, what are the, how do I actually engage just so I get an understanding? Because I've got to tell the board I'm doing something. Look at and ask your staff, what are the most arduous,
Talk to
repeatable,
people. Talk to people.
Exactly. And like, honestly, people love talking about it. Like, they want people to understand what their problems are and to have them solved. And you would find more often than not that just even starting that conversation automatically puts your organization in a much better position for a successful AI rollout.
Well, Kara, thank you so, so much for joining us. I think when we think about design for impact and everything you're trying to do through EthicAI, this is such a powerful episode. And again, we just skimmed the surface on so many things. But of course, people can reach out to you or reach out to Philip or I in terms of understanding a little bit more around everything that we've spoken about today. And we hope you have a lovely evening. What's the weather doing in Sydney today?
Raining. Winter's arrived. Yeah, winter's arrived. Bummer.
Winter. So winter in Sydney, everyone is like 25 degrees and the occasional like spot of rain. So yeah, love that. It's actually beautiful and sunny here in London today. Is it raining in Edinburgh?
No, just a little bit cloudy, but there we go.
Okay. So
and nice and fresh, if you can't handle 25 and rainy, visit Edinburgh.
Yeah. No, I'm not.
Thanks, Kara.
I'm always sunny. Always sunny. I'm like, that's why I moved to Sydney. I'm always sunny.